Hi, welcome back to my Heart to Heart project. Today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Liza. You may have seen her around as she is a creator on YouTube too. She's really somebody that I find I really connect with as a creator in the sense that I feel like she really shares from the heart, even though she doesn't necessarily like express it the way that I do by always talking about the heart. I feel like there's this like there's this willingness and openness about exploring the light and the dark that I feel I'm really drawn to. And so if you're watching today, you're witnessing our first live conversation. And we'll kind of just see how that goes. I'm really excited for it. So welcome, Liza. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for wanting to have me. It means a lot to me, Amanda.
It means a lot to me too. With these heart-to-heart expressions, I'm kind of just practicing, taking what I've been practicing on YouTube in like coming from a vulnerable, heart open kind of space and beginning to exchange with other people in that way. And so like today isn't really like necessarily an interview in the sense that I'm going to be like bombarding you with questions. It's more about us just kind of having a more natural conversation. And I know you're into the whole like just letting it flow as well and being natural. So just trusting the heart to kind of express whatever we need to talk about today.
Great. That's great.
Okay, awesome. I find on top of that willingness to explore the light and the dark, like I just mentioned, I feel like there are some like creators on YouTube that are kind of talking about life and like things the way that we're doing, but I really connect with only a certain like few. And I'm wondering if I just kind of throw that out there, what that brings up for you.
Ever since I started watching you, I always her to put herself out there. And I've always just wanted to encourage that willingness to just free flow out of whatever it is that's coming through. Even for myself, like in my videos, I don't have it in my mind that anyone's watching. I have it in my mind that I'm just kind of allowing myself to give myself a path. In the regular day life, I understand the rules of being polite and not disrupting harmony and not going too deep. But when I found you, I was drawn to you because you gave me something that felt real.
Thank you. I can say the same. I can say the exact same to you.
I understand that it's difficult. It's difficult because most of the time I'm always listening to other people and giving them that space to express themselves. But I also hesitate on a day-to-day, regular basis, like, is this person even interested in hearing me? Will I overwhelm them? Will I shatter them? Because I understand, like, I grew up with different religions in my family, and I understood like what things I can talk about, what things I can't talk about, what things I gotta keep under the rug because it makes other people feel uncomfortable.
It's interesting that you already mentioned keeping things under the rug because I feel like I don't know, through a lot of like the self-exploration stuff that I'm doing and beginning to like own certain parts of myself that I've been like denying and repressing for a long time, I'm like starting to want to take some of those things out from under the rug more and more. It's like, how do we discern? Like, how do we decide, what do we really need to keep under the rug and when can we start to pull some of those things out to be seen?
I just share my stuff, my impressions. I take responsibility, like how I'm perceiving things, how I'm receiving things, how I feel. Like, I know that I can't connect in this level, because everyone has like their own battle within themselves, even myself. So I just share of myself, of my own experience. I take responsibility for what I feel, for whatever it is that's going on. Like this morning, for example, I'm in a fairly new, I mean, we've been together for a year now, but our life experiences are so different. And I've always felt like I'm sharing a little more than he is, but I do it because I want him to understand me, and then possibly later on plant the seed and him share with me when it's okay, when he feels safe enough with me. So I share to kind of evoke a sense of, I'm being vulnerable to you because I trust you, because because I want us to engage in our truth. And I don't want you to think that we're the same. I want to learn from where you see things.
Yeah. Oh, it made me think of something. I'm losing it. I'm like listening to you, and I feel like it can go off in a bunch of directions, and that's why I find it hard to do this live.
I know.
I find it's like, actually, oh yeah, here it is. I find it really cool that it's like, you're able to express yourself to him in that way, and at the same time you've like maybe had more practice because of like your video projects and stuff like that too. And if anything, like you said, like it's so important to be able to show them that you can be vulnerable, to give them permission to do that as well, and to show them what could be possible in order to kind of create that relationship if that's where they want to go to. And for us, and I know, I'm sure that you feel the same, like you hope that that's the kind of relationship that you can have. And I almost feel like that connects to like what I'm trying to do here in a way too, with like the heart to heart project, and like putting it out there on my like YouTube project channel. Just kind of trying to be an example of like the kind of conversation that can happen between people, because some people aren't used to going to those spaces.
And I was one of those people that just stayed quiet for a long time, but I understood later on through interpretation of others that my silence was interpreted as acceptance or agreeableness or not engaging.
I also got like being like a snob or being cold. That's kind of what I started to realize some people were receiving, which I was really surprised, honestly.
No, and a few years ago, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, I'm more impactful in my writing because I don't articulate with my voice, and I feel like the written word is more impactful, because if someone decides to read something of yours, it's them putting aside time and reading it and just sitting with it. So I was always more impactful through writing, because I know that like talking to someone is a very dynamic experience, and people like us, we need time to process or hold space for others, but I'm not always sure when others can respond. So I know that like my pattern is people tend to like feel a little bit overwhelmed by me because I'm like so direct, and it takes them time to like respond. Whatever, people don't like to be pinned down is what I'm saying, and that's why I always hesitate. Yeah. Like I experienced this with a friend that I've had a friendship with for 3 years. And in the beginning, I just like listened a lot, and I kind of put it in the back of my mind. But now that we're in a place where we're closer and they're willing to entertain my thoughts, there were things in the past that they said to me that came across as a bit hurtful, because I understood like where their bias was or how they perceived me. But then I understood about myself that, okay, I'm afraid to hear what people think But if I could break through that, maybe they're not putting me down, but they're telling me how they think. They're telling me how they see things. And then I could receive that a little bit more, and then find a time where I can tell them, this is how I received you. But it's always timing.
Yeah. And it takes that time. And sometimes we don't have the time that we would like to have, which is why like being able to kind of write back is kind of cool. And which is why like these days I'm doing more of these kind of video exchanges, which is like something that like you did with me for the first time, and that I'm starting to do with other people. And I just love it because it allows me to have that time, but still like be able to put across some of the feeling and like energy that doesn't necessarily come through in a letter. And I find it interesting that like you know, people like you said that you felt better like kind of expressing yourself through writing. Same here. And you know, I'm thinking of another person who like talked to me about that recently, and I find it interesting that we're all kind of moving towards like video, or like audio recordings too. And I'm just wondering, like, I don't know, do you still write? Do you still write?
I am writing for myself, but it's because I feel like I've been through a lot, and I've understood the breakdown in relationships, because I feel like I'm a great listener, but because I didn't learn how to engage in that real moment, that I might have contributed to misunderstanding,
Mm.
because others would perceive me listening and nodding and yes, I'm hearing you, but like another to that is, are you listening to me listening to you? Are you asking me what I'm perceiving? And that's when I went down this bunny trail of, where are my imbalanced friendships?
Yeah, that's so important. It's been like really big for me recently too, to start to like pay attention to those imbalanced friendships and noticing those like people that you know I sit with and I listen to like literally for hours, and I'll maybe say two things and but also beginning to realize that I have a bit more control over that than I allowed myself to have, and that I realized in the sense that like I would be listening for hours and I would be so dead at the end, and I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how to get out of it, or how to like try to participate or like, you know, get my side heard as well. And so now I'm like trying to actually make an effort to like interrupt sometimes, or to try to like cut the conversation off when I feel myself getting tired, because the other person can just talk forever. But it's work actually.
And I noticed this with us when we were doing our video letters, and I was like, everything, because you're like, yeah, unleash it on me, but I was like, are you sure, Amanda? And then you were trying to respond to everything, and I saw your emotional responses, and I'm like, I felt almost bad that I made you feel like you had to respond to everything, but you didn't. I was just sharing, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I totally get that. And but it's also because like it's not even always from like I want to respond to everything for you. It's because I actually just want to respond to everything, because everything that you're talking about is like actually interesting to me, which doesn't always happen, you know. So I'm like, I also just want to talk about all the things that like all those rabbit holes or directions that you brought me in, because it's cool and it's exciting, and I want to do that, you know. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, sometimes we need to focus a little bit.
We have a similar personality where we want to counsel others, but we don't see ourselves doing it, you know. And I what I've learned in this way that I've been operating with people is that I I rolled out the red carpet for them automatically, and in some way it was interpreted like I'm perceiving them as weak, and then they resented me for it.
Mm. is there like a situation that you're thinking of that you kind of want to talk about, or?
Well, like last year around this time, before I met my boyfriend, um, I was I was in a space where like I wasn't sure of my job because I was a contractor, and they were telling me you got to find another job because your contract's ending. And I had recently gone through like a breakup with somebody, and I was hanging out with an old friend that knew me for 20 years. And then I was hanging out with a younger man just as a friend, and like I was just spreading myself out all over the place because I was vulnerable. I was like sharing this with all the people around me, and they thought that they had to save me, but I was just sharing.
I find the way that you talk about like your relationships and just like your interaction like with people in your life like just to share like my perspective. I mean, obviously I'm not there, I don't really know, I don't know everything at all, but I just like really get this impression that you've done like a lot of work when it comes to the relationships, like, and just being able to really like take care of yourself and know how to interact with people. Like it just feels like there has a lot of like there's been a lot of work that's been done and that it's paying off, you know?
Yeah. See, the thing is, it's like I like to help others, and I like to share of myself, whatever challenge I may be going through. But at the same time, because I've lived through a lot, I realize our relationships influence our frames of perception.
Yeah.
But at the same time, whose frames are you wearing? You always have to ask yourself that.
It's just making me think of something that I feel like has been coming up a lot in recent conversations, even in that like hangout that you guys did recently. Some people are like older or have like walked more years on this earth and have been through like more things, and I think that's part of like why I'm also drawn to you as well. Like I feel that wisdom, and I feel that, again, like what I just said before, like that work that's been put in, like you're not just kind of like, I don't know, just living your life and like not trying to make things better, you know? Like I get that sense that you're trying to improve like yourself and your relationship and your life, and I think that's what I really really appreciate as well, because not everybody does that, you know? Is there anybody that like is older than you that you look up to, or that you kind of like listen to or learn from or exchange with?
There are different people, but I do understand their point of view. Like my mother, right? My mother has only been with my father, and that's it. And that's what she wanted for me. But that's not the life that I led. But I always have to understand where people are coming from, and maybe they share things with me because they're probably like trying to protect me from their own fears, but then at the same time it's like, and which fears others, and not respond in a place where I'm responding from somebody else's fears.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like I've really started to kind of awaken to in the past year. I mean, it's always kind of been there, but like really starting to realize like others' expectations that have been on me, or others' fears that have been on me that aren't actually mine, and kind of like, I don't know, getting rid of all of that and like starting to like reconnect to like, what do I actually want for myself? What am I actually afraid of? You know, or whose fears am I kind of taking on and I'm letting hold me back, you know? So yeah, I totally agree with that. And you know, when it comes to parents, I mean, there's always like maybe a different kind of set of fears there. It's the same in my experience.
When I was younger, I would jump into pools not knowing how to swim. Right? I literally would just jump in. And yeah, and there was two cases where I almost drowned, with somebody, saw that, yeah, when I was little.
Yeah.
But then, like, somewhere in my teens, I learned how to swim. I knew logically I knew how to swim. But I was still taking on my mother's fear of me drowning, because she was still seeing me as a little girl who was drowning.
Wow.
So when I was 19, I was like in this pool where, like, all these little kids were jumping off the diving board and just swimming and being free and trusting themselves. And I'm like, I'm going to get over this fear right now. So I, like, walk up the diving board, and I said, but I was really tense. So I jump off, my body was tense. I go straight down, and my body was so tense that I did hit the ground, but I swam up. I was like, I finally got up. I knew that the lifeguard was about to come and save me, but I was like feeling so great about myself. Like, oh, I swam up. But then I looked down at my shoulder, and it was like off. It was like dislocated. It was like, ah. But I knew it was because of all the tension. That is still a fear I have to work through in my mind, because I dislocated my shoulder that day. And I remember on my honeymoon, when I was married, we went on our honeymoon, I still couldn't swim in the ocean. I was like, I had to hold on to somebody because I still had the fear in my mind. And then, like, a few years ago, I went to swim with the dolphins. I had a life preserver and everything. I knew I wasn't going to drown. But because in my mind, I was like, I know I drown, or I'm scared. And I paid for that swim with the dolphins, and I couldn't go. And I missed out on an experience. That is something I still have to, because I have to ease my mind, because I know logically I know how to swim, but if I don't ease my mind, I will not let myself swim.
Wow, that's really intense.
It's something I want to conquer this summer. Like, I have to, like, ease my mind when it comes to that fear, because I know how to swim.
Mm. It's just such a shame because, like, I personally love swimming, and so it just really makes me sad to hear that, actually.
But I understand on a logical level, it's my fear blocking me. So I understand that I will block myself with that fear. It's applicable to anything, even these YouTube videos, right?
Yeah, it's a fear that's in the mind, but that you can't necessarily like control. Like you said, logically you know, but you need to work through it somehow and like release it.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the dolphins that you mentioned, just because dolphins have kind of been coming up for me a lot. And so the fact,
Wow.
yeah, so the fact that you just mentioned them through this story makes me just think about like even the fact that you have an elephant behind you right now. Like, I'm really into like animal symbols, and I know that you are too. And I don't know, do you I just kind of leaving this open for you?
No, I'll tell you why I have elephants. When baby elephants are captured,
Yeah.
elephants have such a beautiful, great memory. Memory is a great thing and it's a bad thing at the same time, because when they're captured, they're tied at the ankle at a stake, and they'll remember for the rest of their lives, even if they're like big, glorious animals, that they were captured once.
Mm.
So for me, elephants represent, like, I have a great memory, but I just have to break free from that trauma, because I'm already big and glorious, but my mind has to catch up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Say this right after talking about your fear of swimming and the memory tied to that. Very interesting. So you got to let go of that elephant memory.
It's a blessing and a curse, like every other gift, right? I
Yeah.
guess.
Like I like to look into the different ideas of like what symbolism can be associated to these different animals, because sometimes it's things that I don't necessarily think of right away. And so I kind of write them down. I kind of like, and then just see kind of what sticks. And now when I see elephant, I think family. Um,
Oh,
and so I don't know. I guess this is just making me think that like for me, the fact that you have like an elephant behind you, just like for me, it's like a sign of like, you know, I feel just really grateful to be able to connect with you like this and to have found like a friend that I can chat with like this and exchange with on these things that
Me
like,
too. Me too.
yeah, thanks for that. Let's just kind of feel in and see if anything else kind of wants to be said right now. Um, there's one more thing maybe I'll try. I don't know if you use tarot cards at all. Because I had pulled a tarot card before, just before we got together, just to see what would come up. And I found this picture was really cool because there's a woman in it that I was just like, that's Liza. And so I want to show you.
Oh, thank you.
Wait, here she is.
That's so cool. What
Like
is?
like this goddess.
Oh, that means a lot to me.
To me, I see, I don't know, these little red things as being flower petals and just like your connection to the seasons and like nature. When I pulled that card, that to me was you. And I was just like, yeah, like I'm about to talk to a goddess.
Oh, that means a lot to me.
It's just really how I feel. So
My niece is like 13 years old, and she told me, remain fun and powerful. And I told her, like, whatever you see in
it's kind of funny how we can come across to people sometimes and we're like,
yeah.
we really don't know. But it's kind of cool to get the feedback sometimes. Sometimes. So I think, you know what, I think I'm just gonna kind of like wrap it up here, but with an invitation to you to maybe like do this again sometime if you
Yeah, I
yeah.
would love to. Yeah.
Okay. Like I feel like since I first sent this first invitation out to you, it was really kind of like the beginning, and you know, our appointment was kind of like far away, and I was like, oh, you know, that feels far, but like maybe it's because stuff is going to happen in between, and it feels like it has, you know. And I like that we had some video exchanges in between, and I was doing stuff with other people too, and so like the way that I'm seeing this has changed since then, so like the timing just like feels like it was perfect.
And even that is a liberating thought, because time changes us, experience changes us.
Yeah, totally, totally. And for me, it's like right now, it's about just like taking my time with stuff and like letting things take their time, like take the time that they need. And so I don't know, just kind of imagining that next time we chat, like some things are going to happen between now and then, and that'll be cool to kind of like meet up again in this
Yeah,
way
totally.
and just kind of see how things unfold.
Yay.
Thank you so much for like joining me in this heart to heart conversation, and I really look forward to exchanging with you again soon.
My pleasure.
Lots of love.